Our subject this week is kind of a continuation of our live stream, which we talked about Sam Bellamy. So we're going to continue.
What about you? Okay, so Sam Bellamy.
This book has a very abridged version of his career. So, like I was saying, they're the ones that talked about him being the Order based on his speeches.
It's just weird. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah,
I don't even know
what
where
they're saying is when
from.
he captured ships. It says right here, but also they got the Robin Hood of the Caribbean.
Yeah,
obviously.
which that was pretty commonly known.
That was more between him and his crew, I think, because I think that's where they are the ones that came up with that.
I don't know. I've never heard of that before. And then the problem is with the speeches that you're talking about, the ones he did and the ones that Mr. Willis was mentioning last night in the chat, that those we don't even know are real. They're legit.
They got these quotes. They're in here. It's actually right after here because they're talking about him being, and the Order thing I think they're talking about was given to him by the people that he captured. It was just his captors because I guess his thing was when he captured the ships, he'd give these little speeches, and he had it's funny because he actually might have had this stuff sounds prepared, you know. So I see what you're saying. It just sounds like he sat in his cabin before they captured the ship and wrote this stuff out. Then we captured the ship. Let me give my speech.
Well, you also realize that some of these speeches are actually from other later people.
Some of this is not him. Some
of the versions and not the total verbiage. But part of the speech and the structure and just we talk about how when you're reading somebody's writing, you know the feel of their cadence, of how they speak, of how they write. You know if it's an AI or if it's written or phony. So
this seems like it was written by an author.
Well, not just by an author, but if you go read some of the other ones of the later 1700s or earlier 1800s, and those are well documented, the speeches, the conversations, the text, the letters, versus the pirates and all that. And then you start to think that maybe it was a general statement and that somebody like Charles Johnson or Daniel Defoe or William Dampier didn't really do too much of that, but they romanticized it way more to make them cooler and to sell their books.
So Johnson probably had a little snippet and probably expanded on it.
Was Bellamy in Johnson's book, The History of Pirates?
I think so, yeah. Actually, according to Wikipedia, he is, because they talk about the Whydah, and I think Johnson talked about the Whydah in his book. So I'm pretty sure I remember seeing it when I was reading Wikipedia about him, that he had stuff in there about him.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I've read so many damn books lately, I can't remember anything. But no, I know he was called the Robin Hood.
Yeah.
That one makes sense too, and he had the attitude. And when you start thinking about why he got into piracy, for his love, Mary Hallett, Maid Marian.
Well, what's cool about this book is that it's the actual complete.
Which one is this, by the way?
Is the Pirates, the.
This is the one I found in Antiquin.
Yeah, so it's by Marco Carini and Flora McCallan, and. What's cool about this book is it is not only the Golden Age of Piracy, but it starts out
all the piracy.
The complete history of piracy.
Yeah. Vikings.
The problem with it is that some of the bigger pirates, Bellamy is only on 2 pages of this whole book.
So it's like the Wikipedia. What books were before we got Wikipedia?
Yeah, they hit the highlights and that's it. There's no
an encyclopedia,
expanding.
Yeah.
They were another thing that I found when we talked about it during the show was about him abandoning his wife and child.
Well, they weren't married, but yes.
Yeah, so they're calling it wife and child.
So they're calling it wife and child in here?
Mm-hmm.
So they're calling it wife and child here. And then you look at the Pirate Kingdom and what other of the legends was that they got it on. He left to prove his right to be.
Well, yeah, I
nice
remember.
catch.
I remember them saying that the baby wasn't born by the time he left. So him abandoning wife and child.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, technically, because if she was pregnant when he left, then, but he may not have even known that because he was already gone.
Yeah, I don't think he knew anything about any of that. I don't think it was.
I don't think he knew she was pregnant. So she would have had him abandoning wife and child to go be a wrecker. And I actually looked up what they mean by a wrecker, and they covered that in here too, which they talk about it. They talk about it. What is it? They're a wreckers. They sat on shore, close to shore.
Oh, you're talking about where they brought the lantern out there, and anybody who didn't know the area very well would think that it was another ship, and because their storm was going on, they would come over there, which is why most of the ships, the cargo wasn't found, and yeah, there's just no cargo found. There was no reason for them to crash.
They used the lights to lure him into shore, and then they plundered the ship once it got up to him.
So they're saying that she was a wrecker?
No, he was. That's before Palsgrave found him. He was a wrecker. Yeah.
I've never heard half of this crap.
Yeah,
is there another encyclopedia reference from this book? What it references from?
I don't know. I didn't look at if they have a bibliography in here or not. But yeah, that's another thing that's in here that I thought was like kind of okay. Well, they never talked about that in Pirate Kingdom at all.
Well, Pirate Kingdom really is kind of like the idea of this, where it skimmed the very top level of the story, and it didn't really get into the facts, which is interesting because if you watch, we know a lot of what we've read about with us being an authentic pirate history group, and with Ed Fox and a lot of these other authors that we have books from and follow, and it's very interesting to see their take on the series after it came out. Their attitude towards it was very, very... Yeah,
their biggest thing was the costuming, I think.
It wasn't...
Well, and that they didn't use a lot of what they said.
Yeah, that's the part
they said stuff and they just went their own way and said screw it and did it the way they wanted it anyway.
Yeah, I think that was more the interesting thing on that.
That'd be frustrating, if I was at Fox, especially as, he takes that stuff seriously.
Well, he's got a PhD in it. I would too. That's what I went to school for crying out loud, and I wrote books on it. That's the last thing I would want, is somebody to take a book of mine and going on doing a show and only taking the parts and pieces that make sense and moving on from that.
And, being a reenactor and getting into...
historical living.
Yeah. Doing it all historically, he has every right to be upset about that. I would be too, but that's, that's Hollywood. They do their own thing.
When we were doing when I was doing a little bit more research into Mary Hallett, whatever name
Just call her Maria.
Maria, the witch of whatever, Goody Hallett. We'll just call her Goody Hallett because that's what it really was. I found a blog article where somebody was talking about the whole thing about the Whydah and the witch of Wellcraft, witch of Wellfleet.
Wellfleet, yeah.
Witch of Wellfleet.
That's what
so I was doing a piece on that, and what caught my attention was a particular response onto that post, and the response was from the Whydah Pirate Museum. Now, I have not gone and looked and see if this is fact, because we do have a book on the Whydah from the expedition of that. It's one of the books we have. I just haven't...
The expedition to recover the wreck?
Yeah. But it obviously, and everything they did from the wreck goes to the museum, and I think the museum also has a book. So I haven't gone that far. I just discovered this, so I haven't dug too much into it. But the interesting thing is that they were, and I want to jump to the one piece because it's going to go into this, and I don't know where you have it on your slew of things before talking about his life of they thought he was a wrecker and how he really died.
Yeah, that's I was gonna basically bring that up.
So in this book, it says literally that Sam Bellamy and few surviving crew members were imprisoned, condemned, and executed for piracy. They met their maker at the end of the hangman's noose. I have a big no written in this because I was like, what? Out of everything I've read and everything I've done research on, because like I said during the live, he's my favorite pirate. I was like, he died. He was not one of the surviving pirates. He's not in the trials. There is a document called the Trial of the 8 Pirates that the Boston Newsletter got that we have a copy of. Mm-hmm. And nothing in there specifically says Sam Bellamy. So what I thought was really interesting and what caught my attention was on this comment. It said, there is enough historical and archaeological, legendary, and geological evidence to suggest that Sam Bellamy might very well have survived and escaped and could have in fact taken Goody Hallett with him. I have never heard that until I read this.
Maybe they're assuming that because there wasn't anything about him in the trial.
Or that they never found. Somebody said they never found his body. So they're taking
no information as good information, basically.
The 10 who were aboard Mary Ann were caught by the sheriff, but the Mary Ann's 3 original crewmen were immediately released.
I think
Bellamy's 7 were brought to Boston, stood trial for 7 months. Eventually, 1 was released. He had also been one of Bellamy's prisoners, and the remaining 6 were executed by hanging on a tiny island very near to what today is Logan Airport in Boston. I was blown away by that statement, and I wonder if that's where this came from.
I think,
or what derived that from.
I think because there was no information, they just made shit up. They just made everything up because there's nothing to refute it. So why can't you just go and make it? He lived.
But this is why I want to go look it up, because it's the Pirate Museum who made the comment. The Whydah Pirate Museum.
About him possibly living?
This whole statement and response is by the Whydah Pirate Museum.
Yeah, it doesn't mean jack.
I know, which is why
these guys are supposed to be historians too, They're just historians like everyone else.
But the Pirate Museum, the Whydah Pirate Museum, is solely dedicated to Whydah and Sam Bellamy. That's their life's work.
You would think they would know.
But I think that they might have
a pretty good idea.
But it would be interesting to go back and see what resources that are drawing them to conclusion. Just like I was sitting there talking about Henry Avery and Henry Morgan and how I came to that conclusion. At least I sat there, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, this equals 6, this equals, the letter bet, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and this is when we were talking about it during the live stream, that's what I was saying. You have to take all these different pieces and kind of either mash them together or come up with your own, okay, that sounds legit, that sounds like BS.
I wish we would have brought another one in here. So.
And then you do what we did with, like the Henry Avery being with Morgan.
But it's the research and getting those primary resources.
Find the dates. Well, if somebody's going to say Avery was with Morgan, well, go back and find the dates. Could he have been? Well, we figured out by looking at the dates that he was 8 or 9 years old around that time. Probably BS.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the route you have to go with this. Well, okay, so Sony's going to say he's possibly alive, and it's the Whydah Museum. Well, maybe that's a good subject to put in the authentic living history. The Pirate Living History group. Be like, look,
I'm not a big fan of doing that because I want to.
This book says this. What are your thoughts?
This one and this is Pirates. This book is called Pirates of the Chesapeake Bay from the Colonial Era to the Oyster Wars. Talking to the camera now, which I read from cover to cover. I thought this was a really good book for a lot of the stuff I didn't know. And the items that I thought I knew was either contradicting or it just didn't mix into a lot of the other information that I had been reading. And what I was going to say is that what I'm starting to do now is when we're doing research in this books, those yellow cards I'm putting in there are the tag of the subject we're looking for in the pages. So at least when we go to the book now, when we can pull the card and see, okay, this is one of the books we got the information from. Trying to do a little bit more of our crossing our T's and dotting our I's on our own research, especially since the quantity of books that we have acquired digitally and hard copy. I mean, you think we probably have over 300 resources of information from everything from the colonial era all the way up to, John Paul Jones and current pirates and stuff like that. So going through some of that and
it all together
and not being biased. I think that is the hardest part because we are not. That's the hardest part with doing a lot of this research, and it's draining. I think about what I do at work with the research and the workflows and stuff I do, and just farming. That's the best way I could talk about is farming the data from different locations and then putting it in a big pile of shit and making it pretty. Polishing the turd to make it sense of what you're reading. I mean, you think about what you look at with these books and then what we talk about with Between the Bulkhead type of stuff, and then your YouTube videos, you go and do your research, and also our crewmates and going in authentic living history on the
hearing other
the
historians
Facebook.
talk about things. You just want to, when they say something you're pretty sure is BS, and you just want to, you're like,
I want to know more. I want to know, but I also want to know where did you get that information from? Just tell me where you got the information from, so I can go look myself.
Want to pull them aside and be like, "What are you doing?
Where did
you get this?
Where did that come from?
Because this is not what I think, or what I've read, or what I've found in my research."
Pirate Kingdom. I know we totally digressed in the conversation, but Pirate Kingdom. When we were watching that, a lot of the authors that they talked about, that came and did their discussion, we got a lot of books. I ended up going out and buying those books.
Oh, from the historians that were
the historians.
doing
so we got the one from Ed Fox. There's a couple of other ones.
We definitely have the book from Colin Woodward.
Got a couple of them. Back to the information. So yes, I did get a bunch of those books. In fact, one of them is one of those women pirate books that I'm struggling to get through, which we can do Between the Bulkhead next month when we get into Women's History Month. Oh my God, I got
the struggle of this book.
Oh my God, I got so much we could talk about during that month about women pirates in general and all of this and my opinions of it. I know somebody else who we could probably invite up.
Hey, nobody cares.
Oh, bite me. So, but yeah, it was I think getting those books has been kind of eye-opening on also the subjects they got. It's very interesting, and I think we've seen some of the authors and other topics, but David Cordingley, Colin Woodward, those are two of the big ones we got. We obviously Ed Fox, we have a lot of his resources from the group, and we've just got one of his books. We'll probably try to get some more. We have the Pirates of Chesapeake, Pirates of Maryland.
Yeah, it's got another book called Pirates in Their Own Words, which you would probably like because I'm guessing it's stuff from their trials and all that.
Yeah,
their testimony and all that.
Yeah, I think when we pull together some book fund money, we'll do that. Obviously, whenever we go out to any secondhand stores, I'm always looking for a new pirate book. I don't care if it's, especially when we go to secondhand places and getting these for a couple bucks to be able to just add to it. Because I feel that looking at these different resources like this and some of the other ones and seeing what they're saying and going and understanding why. That's the big part. And is it because it's the romanticization of what they're trying to do with pirates? I mean, Bellamy is probably Bellamy and Blackbeard, I would say, are the two biggest pirates for romanticizing piracy.
Yeah. Kidd was probably a big one too.
Well, he was a privateer, not pirate.
Yeah. Kidd, Blackbeard.
And Kidd was earlier, so that is a good one. Yeah. Kidd was being in the first Golden Age of Piracy versus the second.
Think about all the movies they made. Who are who are the subjects of those movies? All the people we're talking about: Blackbeard, Kid, Morgan. Those are all the guys that show up in the movie. So those are the ones that they wanted to romanticize.
Well, I think you
wouldn't make a movie about them if they didn't.
Morgan, I would say he is probably one of the better, well documented, and we cannot call on the English side being a privateer versus a pirate because of the documentation and him being a well-educated man and writing his own journals. I mean, you think about it, the only reason why we know about Alexander Selkirk is because of Woodes Rogers and William Dampier. That's probably the only reason why we know about most of the pirates and Hornigold. Hornigold was an educated man, wasn't he? He knew how to write.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, Teach was.
Well, yeah, we know what Teach was.
Journals.
It's possible that Hornigold kept Teach around because he was educated. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if he was either.
I mean, really, you think about it, most of the guys that were in leadership positions as pirates are usually the educated one.
Black Bart.
Yeah. You know, they're normally, obviously, if they're, they're either good sailors or they're educated or they're just plain good sailors. Those are the guys that make the leadership.
Well, it's the captain piece.
Yeah.
But that kind of now got me wondering of how many of, there was...
Especially if they were former Navy.
Kid actually kept journals and was, from what I remember reading when we were doing the episode a couple seasons ago, he destroyed the books because of the logs and everything. And it Kate a merchant. He had to be the Kate. He was the Kate a merchant, right? Yeah.
I don't remember.
We talked about this last night, and I totally... Hold on. I gotta look. Because it's gonna drive me nuts. We were talking about it last night, and I totally forgot. I need to know which one was Kate a merchant.
I think you're right. I don't know for sure, though. There's so many ships. It's hard to keep track of it all.
If I can spell it right.
Well, I'm pretty sure Hornigold was a former sailor, Royal Navy too, wasn't he?
Yeah, Kid got the Kate a merchant. Okay. Yeah, he was. That's why he would only. That's why he wanted. That's why he wouldn't attack English ships.
Yeah. So those guys, they may not have been formally educated, but they weren't stupid.
No.
Let's put it that way. They didn't get where they were as pirates.
No, but I think what I was getting at was the documentation and the journal writing.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. Well, it's like, that's why we keep talking about how hard it is to find documentation on pirates because they
burned them probably.
They didn't want to be documented. That just got them in trouble.